Executive Secretary of the National Health Insurance Scheme, NHIS, Usman Yusuf, and former Chairman of the National Human Rights Commission, NHRC, Chidi Odikalo, on Thursday disagreed on the origin of banditry in Nigeria. Yusuf was a keynote speaker at the ICRI live discussion series titled Nigeria's Insecurity, addressing the challenges of banditry and kidnapping. While Odikalo was among the panelists, they were joined by other discussants at the virtual meeting, such as former Senator representing Kaduna Central, Shehu Sani, editor-in-chief of the Guardian newspaper, Martins Oloja, and executive director of the ICR, Dayo Ayetan. Yusuf, a professor, said banditry in Nigeria started in Kogi State, where kidnappers from Edo State hired herders from the north to keep their victims and shared part of their ransoms with the herders. Upon realizing how lucrative the business was, the herders returned home to begin kidnapping. He said, "We know the injustice that have been done to the Fulanis over generations before we were born. They are one people that do not own land in this country. Their cows are rustled. There are lots of injustice, usually by local authority, local judges, local police, and local policemen. They would sell their cattle. All these injustices are catching with us." A bandit told me that all kidnapping in Nigeria started around 1999 to 2000 in Kogi State. What happened was that many of these young herders were told by their parents to take their cattle down south for pasture. They spent months and came back up north during the rainy season. He told me there is a forest around Kogi area where kidnappers from Edo would bring in their abductees into the forest for these Fulani young men to hold for them. Once they get the ransom money, they come and give it to them, and they took the abductees back. So they realized there was money to be made from this criminality, and they started doing that. They started getting involved in drugs. They started getting involved in alcohol, he claimed. However, former Odinaku disagreed. Odinaku disagreed with him and said there had been proliferation of arms in the north before the 1987 Kafansha crisis. Odikalu, a professor of law, said proliferation of arms in north escalated the crisis in 1987. According to him, the weapons were imported from various West African countries, and former President Babangida tried to chase the foreigners who brought the arms into the country at the time. He said there were drugs in Kano and Fulani settlements years before Lawrence Anini, a famous criminal in southern parts of the country, came to limelight, adding that the Kafansha crisis was a crisis of banditry over artisanal mining. Reacting to other issues mentioned by Yusuf, Odekalu said there were things that people in different regions in the country could agree on, which he listed to include inability of military action to resolve banditry, governance crisis, but he objected to Yusuf's position that grievances of the Fulanis were responsible for insecurity catching up with the country. He contested that nobody had monopoly of grievances in the country. In fact, several other Nigerians could possibly argue that Fulanis have dominated the country. This is an uncomfortable conversation, but I don't think Nigerians must have the conversation about grievance and domination and hegemony. If everyone who has grievance resorts to shooting, there is not just going to be enough people to be destroyed in the country, he stated. He added that there were between 379 to 383 ethnic groups in the country, with everyone having its sense of grievances. The Fulanis have no monopoly of grievance or capacity to shoot their ways into grievance or out of it. I think that needs to be made very clearly. He stated. Yusuf had earlier explained that he had been involved in dialoguing with the bandits because insecurity in the country was capable of consuming the nation. Why did I get involved? Bandits are ours. IPOB are ours. Boko Haram are ours. All of these non-state actors, they are ours. Unless we come to the space by talking, they will occupy the space and we will find nowhere to go. He said banditry and kidnapping in the country was a social problem and not military's, adding that insecurity stemmed from corruption and bad governance. He frowned at what he described as government's increasing militarization of what was essentially a social problem and emphasized that dialogue was the best option to end banditry and kidnapping in the nation. There is a crucial role for the military, but there is no military solution to the conflict, he stated. Yusuf opined that Nigeria did not know the enemies it was fighting and that there had been lack of synergy among its security top brass. Stressing the imperative of dialogue, he appealed to governors across the country not to close their windows against dialogue with criminal elements with their domains. In his contribution, a former senator, Shehu Sani, said insecurity in the nation had economic and political undertones. He said the Fulani bandits should be condemned. We all have grievances, but it is not an excuse for anyone to pick up arms, kidnap people, and extort ransom from individuals, particularly poor people, Sani said. He called on governors in northern parts of the country to come together and see the challenges as a serious problem threatening whatever efforts they made to develop the region. Sani also called for harmonious approach to addressing banditry in the country, a situation where you have some governors believing that this is a channel that can be explored to bring an end to this grievance, and some thinking that it is not something they should associate with. Then you can't give solution to the problem. If you solve the problem in Zamfara and Niger and the problem is not solved in Kaduna and Sokoto State, the problem will never be solved at all, he said, referring to Governor Nasser El-Rufai and others who have vowed never to dialogue with criminals. Okay, you see this northerners, and this Yusuf, I think during the time when Akeredolu and Sunday Igboho made their declaration about the Fulanis. Oh my God, this man was just blowing hot. Now it's aligning with Gumi. And he said he's a professor. Does it really make sense? And thank God for the people who have answered him. Who does not have grievance? Which people do not have grievance? Which region do not have grievance? And he said, the banditry started from a Edo state, and they will now bring it to the people in the Fulani Esme in Kogi State, and they now saw that this whole thing is lucrative, and exactly what El-Rufai was saying, that these people, there's no Fulani man that have tasted or experienced this kidnapping that will want to go back, that there's no need of negotiating with them, that aside. So now they told him, and thank God for people who with history, they counseled him. You can't say this has been happening before now. They always want to shift blames, and to make matter worse, he said because they are not happy, they have grievances here and there. Does that make sense? So Nigerians who are suffering and who are as a result of the policy, bad governance of the politicians. So everybody should, like he said, now if everybody should now go into that venture into that line, that means it will not be enough. Nigeria will not be enough to destroy, because everybody will be destroyed. This one destroy, this one destroy, this one destroy. Then everything will finish. Is that an excuse? A professor for that matter. You see the way they reason? No, tell me, you see the way they reason? A professor telling us that because of this, and the same thing Gumi has been saying, that if you listen to them, have you listened to other people? And again, trying to merge IPOP together with a Boko Haram is an insult. No, you are trying to give them different name, because bandit and Boko Haram, they are the same. They are just operating at different levels. And the same bandits, the same S-men now, you guys have transported them back to the north, to the south, committing all manner of atrocities. And you don't seem to caution them. You are telling us that they have grievances. That is why they are doing what they are doing. Does that really make any meaning to you? So why is it that they cannot be arrested, but you can arrest other criminals? Do you care to ask them about their grievances before you throw them inside jail? So guys, let's hear your opinion on this.